Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Martien. I'm working from Royal Haskoning DSV, and I'm happy to be the moderator of this journey. I call it a journey because we are what is expected in the next decade. So I have a couple of fortune tellers now at the stage, and hopefully they can enlighten a bit what's going to happen, let's say, in the coming decade, 10 years. Let them introduce them by themselves. Tobias.
Yeah, thank you, Martien. My name is Tobias Wolf. I'm the Deputy Head of Product Management at STULZ in Hamburg. And I've joined STULZ about 5 years ago and working since in the development of new products for cooling. STULZ has the mission since a long time to be the most energy efficient solution provider for mission critical applications. So if you talk about efficient cooling, that's what we're doing since a long time. And yeah, but now it's the question: what is to expect next? And yeah, since maybe one comment from me in the beginning, I've been at STULZ since 5 years, and I have seen in all reports and statistics that the POEs, the efficiency of data centers, has not much decreased. So the efficiency was quite stable about the last 5 years. So I think that's the question: what is next about efficient cooling then?
George.
My name is George Van Giesen. I'm the National Sales Manager for RainCycle, one of the Watts Water Technologies companies. And I got involved in the whole alternate water conversation and development of technology as a result of need. There was a massive drought in the southeastern United States about 15 years ago, and we were within days of running out of water. And for me, it was hard. I think it's hard for us to imagine running out of water, and especially in a country like the Netherlands. It's a water-rich country, water is everywhere. But there were regulations in place that wouldn't allow us to use alternative sources. There was a lack of technology. There was a lack of experience. There was a lack of filtration, what's too much, what's not enough. And so it was the right time and the place to get involved with these sorts of new technologies. And now, with the development of data centers, it just seems a natural fit. You've got big buildings. You have large surface areas. Why not take advantage of that? So there you go. Go ahead.
Thank you, George. I'm actually a colleague of George. My name is Benjamin van Lent. I'm the Sales Manager Solutions for Watts in Europe. Together with our company Watts, we would like to be part of the evolution, or let's say the future of data centers and how it will evolve. For us, important is that we develop products suitable to create, let's say, a greener image for data center, because it's needed. There's a big discussion going on, which we'll discuss later. Also create or develop new products which Tobias and his company can use. So that's actually our goal and our purpose. Thank you.
Okay. As you can see, there are 3 persons here, and at the end, let's say we are currently in the Netherlands, but we have a German, we have a person from the US, and also a Belgian guy. So hopefully you can also put some additional international flavor to this discussion. First of all, as I think the question is, let's say, efficient cooling, what's expected the next decade? I think efficient cooling was always on the plate. Because it's directly, let's say, any saving on cooling is directly, let's say, additional profit. But what is, to your opinion, let's say, in the coming years, what are the drivers and what you see in the environment, the IT environment, what could change, let's say, the whole cooling technology, and what kind of effect would that be on all kind of parameters?
Yeah, so if we look at the IT environment inside the data center, I think there are basically 2 drivers there. One is the hope for even more energy efficiency, which we can, of course, do by raising the temperature even more. As long as the CPUs and the other electronic parts can handle, we can increase the temperature to temperatures about 40 degrees in the data center. And that's certainly one driver for energy efficiency in the cooling system. So, I think another big trend we are seeing coming over from the US first and then from APAC, from Asia Pacific, is the trend to high density data center IT. And here we see that the raised floor we knew for so much years will vanish. First in the big data centers, but then also going down to medium-sized data centers. Because with standard air cooling from a raised floor, we are not in the place to cool racks above 35 kilowatts. So we need different technologies. We go to concrete slab floors. We're having fan wall units. We can see already in the first hyperscale projects, and I think that's what we will see in the IT environment.
But just challenging you, Tobias, let's say, is there not a contradiction? Yes, increasing the temperature inside, and on the other hand, let's say the fans in the servers will run faster. So at the end, let's say the total energy consumption is even higher than.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point also, which the whole data center industry, from our perspective of a cooling system manufacturer, is not looking at thoroughly. How does some changes in one part of the data center affects other parts? And so, yeah, there's of course the result of higher air temperatures is that we might have higher fan power on the servers, but also CPUs are the limiting environmental conditions for CPUs is increasing by time. But there's a limit to it, and at some point, we talk about liquid cooling, immersion cooling. We will have to switch to these technologies because air cooling is just at some point at a limit. So I think in 3 to 5 years, we will definitely have a larger impact, a larger share of liquid cooling in the data center.
Okay, so there's already, let's say, shift seen from air-cooled solution to more liquid-cooled. They call it liquid-cooled solutions in any way. Yeah.
There are also more drivers to that. There's also, if we talk about heat reuse, etc., which we will probably in the next few minutes, then I need to switch to other cooling solutions.
Okay, this is, let's say, we're talking about, let's say, the INT environment, but we have a data center is positioned in an environment. What kind of, let's say, drivers you see, and that's all for the whole audience here, what drivers you see, let's say, what can have an impact, let's say, on the cooling technology, but what, let's say, are external. I can talk about, let's say, authorities, maybe legislation or regulation, or what do you see would be the main driver which can change, let's say, the data center cooling topology, let's say, in the coming decade?
Yeah, I think it's what George already said. It's the scarcity of water. For example, we're seeing that in Netherlands, also in Frankfurt. We have water scarcity. So this is one external factor which will influence the use of cooling solutions, and that will be maybe against energy efficiency in the end, not using water. And there's a scarcity of other type. There's a scarcity of energy. So we also have data centers usually in place in the FLAP market, Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, Paris. And the electricity there is of course limited as well, and with higher density, more data centers. I think there's 356 megawatt in construction this year, I heard this morning. This will lead to a scarcity of energy, and we really have to think about how the data center fits into this system, into the energy system, and into the water system.
Yes, and I don't know if it's the same here in Europe, but I know in the United States, some of the data companies have gotten into trouble with the public for not disclosing the amount of water that they use, for example. And in some instances, they were places I know in Arizona where they had demanded the residents take 2-minute showers, limit the outdoor watering, limit washing the dog, washing the car, but at the same time, some of the information had leaked out from the data companies, the massive volumes of water. So if every single citizen in the community had done all of these suggestions, it was nothing in comparison to the disproportionate use of the water. So the data companies can behoove themselves by doing everything they can to be as energy efficient and as water efficient as possible. And I see a lot of development with the liquid cooling. They're more capital intensive up front, but the amount of water that you can, the amount of BTUs from a 2-centimeter pipe, water pipe, is roughly equivalent to a 250 by 350 square area of air. So when you begin to think about these types of efficiencies, it makes perfect sense. It makes all the sense in the world. It conserves water, and also, another important point, is that these data centers are large surface areas, and they cause problems downstream to the increased imperviousness. So it's all around better. Conserve water, preserve the environment downstream, and it's better public relations.
But I also hear, let's say, transparency here. Is it this is a scream for transparency of the market?
It screams for transparency. And in many instances, the data companies signed exclusive agreements that prohibited the local officials from disclosing the amount of water that they used. And that's almost unimaginable. And I think we need to prepare the public for the amount of water we're using. So the transparency is not necessarily bad for the data, because people think, oh, the data companies, they're so... Who drives data companies? We do. You go to Facebook. We, the consumers of data, drive the development of data centers. And I think people forget that, and I think that's very important. So once we understand that, I think it's medicine that we need to take, but it's medicine that we need to understand, and that's what we need to do going forward.
Please add.
Yeah, if I just can add what George just mentioned, I fully agree with him. But I also think it's there's a mindset that needs to change, and we need to create some awareness on the use of water. Everybody uses water on a daily basis. People think, okay, let's fill up the swimming pool, let's wash the car. It's normal. But we need to question ourselves, and we need to create an awareness on this use of water, and there's a lot of scarcity of water. I'm coming from Belgium, and I know in Flanders, in the region where I live, we don't have water anymore. But people are not aware of this, and we're creating an image on data centers and the usage of water, and we're creating a negative sentiment around this data center, and the image we're creating is because of the use of enormous water. But it's a responsibility we need to take. We need to look and to question ourselves on a daily basis and look for alternatives. And I'm sure if we can all contribute or work together, we can achieve that. But we need to be open. And as for the transparency, I also believe we need to be transparent to the people, but also to the people involved in the development of data centers. Because there's some communication, but not enough. We need to look to the whole picture.
Thanks. I have a question, maybe specific, let's say, for Germany. What I noticed now, I encountered, let's say, there was a request, and that's that data center is related to the government, the German government. And there pops up Blue Angel, of blauwe engel. I think it's good, let's say, if you can explain, let's say, what that means roughly. And is that not a disruptor which may be even affecting, let's say, other countries, or will be implemented across Europe? Or what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think the Blue Angel is a very disrupting point, because it is part of the coalition agreement of the new German government. I think that changes a lot, because now it will be legislation to some extent. It comes along in the coalition agreement of the new German government with the reuse of heat, and especially with this eco label, Blue Angel. I will shortly explain what it is. It was set up in 2011 for energy efficient data centers, and there was an update a couple of years ago, 5-6 years ago, for collocators. It aims to have data centers which are most energy efficient and environmental friendly. So you have to fulfill certain criteria. One is monitoring all your energy flows in the data center. There are also some parts regarding the IT. So it must be energy efficient, etc. And in the cooling section, on the energy section, you have criteria like a PUE 1.3. Okay, this is feasible today. But there's also efficiency for the cooling systems and the use of natural refrigerants. So
yeah, the last one I get really triggered by, because you're talking about CO2 or ammonia as the main potential. Currently, let's say the potential refrigeration means, and no one of the other.
Yeah, no synthetic refrigerant anymore. Yeah, and this is really disruptive, because if we look at the Blue Angel, it's in place since 2011, and there are 3 data centers in Germany which are certified with this eco label. And I think this shows how difficult it is to obtain that. And now the German government says, okay, all public data centers, so it's not for all data centers, but all public data centers, must fulfill the Blue Angel. And I think that's very disruptive, because that will change a lot how a data center is built up. Yeah.
But do you expect that it will be, let's say, I call it the German impact in Europe? Can it be, let's say, European legislation? Let's say, because we are talking about the next decade. I'm not talking about 23, but maybe 26 or so, that we get that also, or a weak form of the Blue Angel over Europe? Or?
I think in the past no one cared much about the Blue Angel in Europe, because it was a very, as you can see, 3 data centers certified by that. I think we need more eco labels, or a eco label for data center on a European base. As far as I see that, it need to be on the data center level, on the whole facility, but it also needs to be on the unit level. So for the IT, for the cooling system, we need eco labels to with a minimum criterion for CO2, etc. So, and I think I'm certainly not sure that the Blue Angel will be the blueprint for that.
Okay, but we should watch it. What's going to happen in Germany? Because it's one of the flap countries. So I would imagine that it has an impact on the business.
Yeah, yes, certainly.
Maybe I jump now to, because we talked about water. I heard a lot of, let's say, scarcity and a lot of negative emotion, and I think that negative emotion is also fed by drinking water companies are not willing to give you water for a cooling purpose, or let some data center companies are even say we ban the use of water in the data center industry. That gives me the statement: is water used for evaporation in the cooling system? Is it energy efficient? and sustainable, or is it just energy efficient and especially not sustainable? What is your opinion on that? Maybe George or?
Well, yeah, I think they can be. They can be, but they aren't necessarily right now. We have to look at lots of different water sources, and I think this is the change in our thinking. We now have filtration technology that doesn't involve chemicals. We can safely, approximately 0.5 micron, you can remove most of the biological threats without chemicals. There are backwashing filters. There's lots of technologies that have come around that in and of themselves are not new, but in combination with one another, these systems can be new. So yes, you can use water and be sustainable, but not in every location. And I think that's the other key. I know in North America you have wide availability disparity between water availability in the West versus the East. And so to be sustainable in Arizona with a data center using water, I'm not sure. Because if you're mining all the water that was put in there, 50, 100,000 years ago, it's like a bank account. If you're not giving it back, it's going to go. So I think we have to be very careful about where we put these centers, and again, the transparency, but we can be sustainable, but we really have to look at the whole picture. And I think, again, the transparency is the starting block.
I remember, let's say, I'm not sure you were saying that, but even due to climate change, let's say, the general opinion is that it gets drier, we get less water, the scarcity of water increases. And you were mentioning some parts of the world, it's decreasing, other parts, the opposite, we have much more water.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And so we can take advantage of these things. It's almost like if you're having some illness and you have an elevated body temperature, it's almost like the body temperature going up and down. So you get these very high influxes of water, and they cause more problems. So if you can understand what climate change really does in terms of volumes of water, we can respond to that. We can have different sized detention systems. So we have to be careful with the data that we use. We can't just use old data. We have to model the new data in with the old data, and that's going to give us the more efficient systems. That's going to enable us to respond with different size, like I say, different size holding detention facilities to take advantage in some instances of large rain events that 20, 30 years ago just didn't exist, so sure.
Is it not asking for differentiation then on the definition of sustainable versus?
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. The word is thrown around so freely and so easily, and what does that mean? I think there's no one answer, but looking at a combination of factors. So I'll give you one example. A large data center, let's just say a hyperscale data center, that's a lot of roof area. That's a lot of area of water, but it kind of depends on where you are. If you're in Las Vegas, it may not mean nearly as much as if it's somewhere in Ireland or even here in Western Europe. So understanding climate is very important for the location of these data centers.
Yeah, the other aspect, maybe I'm touching again, let's say the water, and also if you look to the operation of a data center, and let's say if you look to the couple of hours which the equipment is selected on, is water not a solution, let's say, for peak shaving and let's say keep grip on that peak load? Or because let's say if you look to the energy usage of a country, it goes almost simultaneously. The peak of a data set is almost a peak of, let's say, the consumption, let's say, what is needed in a city or so, like Frankfurt or in Amsterdam.
Yeah, I think the topics you mentioned are correct. It's like using water in either adiabatic chillers or indirect evaporative cooling systems has two effects. First, of course, the largest driver, I think, is cutting down operational cost for energy. And the second is using water, yes, I can reduce also the size of the units. So for extremely high temperature, I can add some cooling capacity by the evaporation of water, and I take down 38-degree water to 25. This is a clear equation there. And I think if we want to reduce the water consumption, I think we have to look at the one thing which is definitely peak shaving. Yeah, reduce water to only work as peak shaving, and I think if we look at the point that we don't use potable water, I think there are solutions in place to use rainwater. Maybe you can comment.
We have two specialists.
Because there are systems in place which are not so sensitive to the quality of water. So wet pad systems are not so sensitive to water quality. So particles are not a big problem. And anyway, potable water, I have to treat them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you may have something to add. I don't want to take all the air out of the room.
Go ahead, George.
You may have something to add. Yeah, I mean, we have to, I think, if we had this conversation 20 years ago, just from a technological standpoint, it would be a very different conversation. But I know more so in North America than in Europe, but the regulatory landscape has changed. And there is a much greater willingness on the part of public health authorities to allow different quality water for different end uses. It's not, as I call the magic pipe, it's one size fits all. It's not necessary. I mean, the water going into the toilet doesn't need to be the same quality as the water that goes into our bodies. Same thing with these. And so, but the regulatory authorities really hold the key, because if they don't allow that, because there are negative health effects that can come from evaporative cooling if we have a lower grade water. But we don't necessarily have to chlorinate it, and we don't have to use the old technologies. So
yeah, let's say the general opinion is, let's say, okay, we use water, and even, let's say, not potable water. We adding chemicals, we adding bioxides, we are adding all kind of weird stuff, and that's not something what you don't want.
Yeah,
or is
and it's not necessarily necessary either. I mean, there's plenty of filtration technology, brand new filtration technology that can completely solve that problem without the chemicals. Because the chemicals, as we know, the public has less and less of a taste for the use of chemicals. There's so many problems with that. So, sure.
Okay.
I also believe, coming back, what you said about energy efficiency and sustainability. Yes, I believe it's energy efficient sustainability. As you mentioned, actually we're forced today to look to alternatives. We need to consider all elements. Water companies in the Netherlands are not willing to deliver any potable water anymore to data centers. So we're forced to look to other solutions. And we have, or there are other alternatives to water. We spoke about rainwater, surface water, gray water, even black water. But again, it's up to us.
Maybe for the audience, that let's say make clear what is black water in this.
Yeah, black water, when you flush the toilet.
Oh, that's black water.
Black water.
Brownish, probably, yes. Okay.
But then again, we can talk about using chemicals, and we don't want that. But everything is evolving, and is it a good thing that we need to look to ourselves and let's say the perception of the public or the people on data centers, they're big polluters and they use enormous...
but again, if we look now next decade, do we have, let's say in 2025, we have, let's say, full water treatment solution which has no use of chemicals, no use of bioxides, no, let's say, negative influence on the environment? Available for this kind of facilities? And
yes, absolutely. And the secret lies not just in the filtration technology, but the monitoring. Once we monitor the water, we always say in the sustainability word, you can't conserve what you can't measure. So as measuring technologies become more sophisticated, we're able to measure essentially surrogates for, biological, negative biological activity. So absolutely, the technology is here. We just need to connect the dots and bring it in place. And the data center development is the perfect conduit.
But I see three players here. Let's say I have, a supplier of equipment. I'm not sure, and also I have cooling tower suppliers. I have you as a company who can do filtration. I have a regulatory body, an authority. Why is still that mismatch there? Why is not that connected? Why is that not?
That's a great question. I wish I had that. Maybe you.
Maybe again, transparency, communication. I don't know.
That's too easy.
Yes, I know it's too easy, but
that's too easy.
It's possible that everybody's looking to himself, and maybe we're developing to create better products without communicating to others. I don't know. It's a good question, but yeah.
Well, if you remember, about 100 years ago. A little over 100 years ago, the public water systems were built, and some of the first chlorinated systems went in at the very end of the very end of the 19th century. So there are, in our memory, we remember waterborne diseases killing mass numbers of people, and I think there's a reluctance on the part of public health tends to lag behind technology, and that's not necessarily bad, but at this state, the public health has to come together quickly with technology to allow this. Because we can have all the greatest ideas in the world, but if the public health authorities or the regulatory authorities don't allow it, it's not going to happen. I think that's part of the disconnect.
And now we have three parties, and now the fourth party is, let's say, the data center operator, data center company. Should they position the data center on another place in the world, or following the water? Or what is the?
No, I think the data center stands to be the biggest winner of all of this, because they can be the champions. They can be the champions of bringing us all the photographs, all the social media that we need, and at the same time they can do it in a sustainable way. So it's the push and pull. We have the technology, we have the need, we have the drivers. We need to bring all the regulatory authorities all on board, and I think the time is now.
It's not only bringing them all on board, but to be aligned, I think, because coming back to what Tobias and the Blauwe Engel, I think it's a good thing. I have an eco-label, depending on different criteria, I don't know. But what we see now in Europe, for example, I don't know how it is in the States exactly, but in Europe we have all different countries, even different regions, having their own regulations. So this is also something we need to discuss, to be all aligned, having more or less same criteria or regulations. Because I'm coming from Belgium, I can say, and even in my region, even if we talk about water companies, we have 7 different water companies with their own regulations. So
yeah, I'm currently searching, let's say, because we're talking about the next decade. So we touched a bit on the development, let's say, on the cooling part. At the end, let's say, what will be the big disruptor? What will it be driven by the IT? Will it be driven by regulations? Or will it be driven by suppliers like you, who, let's say, come with a brilliant idea and say, that's the game changer, let's say, which is coming up, let's say, for the next 5-6 years, and that's the technology you want to use. Otherwise, currently, let's say, Blauwe Engel is a little bit give a direction, not using this kind of only natural refrigeration. But I can also say water is also an excellent tool to cool the data center, water. Yep. So what brings us now, let's say, what can help to change really, let's say, in 2025 onwards? What is the main driver? Who is the main party, let's say, who's behind the wheel to make the big change?
I think for the next few years, it is sustainability. It's all the topics that are around sustainability. It's about water use, about energy use. It's about heat reuse. In the end, I think it will be a very complex system out of a bit of water-cooled evaporative systems and heat reuse as much as you can, and Yeah, I think it is. It's a very holistic solution at the end.
Yeah, but will it be driven by the dollar, or will it be driven by emotion, or let's say pressure from society?
I think it will be. It must be driven by legislation, because I think all the rest is cost-driven.
But hopefully, in a democratic society, it's the people who influence the legislation, right? So, I think public awareness. If you think of any of the great public relations campaigns that have occurred over the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years since television has been around, the great changes in society. I know with the pollution, the rivers that caught on fire in the 1960s, the late 1960s, up in the northeastern United States, the public relations campaign around that directly forced legislation. So I don't think you can say one or the other, but the two are going to go hand in hand. Public relations influence legislation, and you know what? They may not have a lot of choice, because the water-scarce regions are just, water has become...
Yeah, let's say we talk a lot about water. In principle, it was mentioned energy scarceness. I think we have
of course.
Water. Also, let's say materials. Let's say we make use of a lot of natural resources, like lithium, like all steel, aluminium, etc., etc. So I'm literally looking now. I want to pick up that stick and say I will be the big game changer here now.
If I knew the answer, I wouldn't be sitting here. No, but coming back on legislation, I agree with Tobias and also with George, but also I think the needs. So for data center.
Oh, sorry. I did look into my audience here. Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, thanks a lot for the. Okay.
Oh, I will finish it. So we need to look to the needs, because for data centers, for example, they're taking a lot. Let's give something back. So
okay, that's almost let's say a prayer. Let's say I have still 5 minutes to go. I understood. Maybe some questions from the audience to the panel. It's quite silent. Nobody. They want to have a drink.
Well, I have lots of questions. I was asked about the Blue Angel. I've never heard of the Blue Angel before. Just a quick read about it. Does it align with the EU Code of Conduct? If you know what the EU Code of Conduct is. Guidelines for energy efficiency. I mean, as I said, I'm not aware of the Blue Angel, so I don't quite know what's aligned there.
As far as I know, I'm not an expert in the EU Code of Conduct, but the Blue Angel is having more fixed criteria, which have to be measured and met at the end of the year. So you're really measuring PoE efficiencies over the year for the cooling system, efficiency of IT systems, etc. So it's not like a best practice. It's like, yeah.
But it's driven by the authorities, by the Bundesregierung.
Yeah. It's government-driven with the environmental agency in Germany, and also STULZ is part of the group which is working on it.
Okay. Any other questions? In that case, I want to thank the very good contribution to the discussion, and hopefully it was interesting for the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.